We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
A powerful earthquake struck the southern Philippines on Tuesday, killing now 7 people.
The resignation of Lebanon's government under pressure from the street looks set to ease a 2-week-old nationwide lockdown, but protesters vow to keep pushing for more sweeping change.
Britain's political leaders test their election pitches after Parliament-backed Prime Minister Boris Johnson's bid for a pre-holiday vote aimed at breaking the lengthy Brexit deadlock. Amalma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. A powerful earthquake struck the southern Philippines, killing 6 people, cracking buildings, and injuring dozens in a region still reeling from a previous deadly tremor. The shaking lasted up to a minute in some areas, damaging homes, multi-story buildings, and classrooms in a region where hundreds are still displaced by a quake that killed at least 5 earlier this month. Now, this school collapsed in Cotabato after the 6.6 magnitude earthquake.
Paglinog man, nidagan ko yun, nagkatraglag po niya, kundog ka na, bundak sa bato.
A teenage boy was crushed by a falling wall as he tried to escape his school in Magsaysay, according to the town spokesman. Though other students were injured in a stampede to escape the building, they survived. Authorities also said rock and landslides unleashed by the violent shaking killed 4 others, while a collapsed wall crushed a man. At least 50 people were hurt by falling debris, including some 7 pupils and teachers hurt escaping their collapsed elementary school. Now, locals were awed by the power of the quake, which was shallow and thus potentially more destructive.
Merong mga malalapit na trace ng fault, so kailangan nating malaman, kailangan nating makita yung mga sinasabi nilang mga tension cracks, mga fissures, kasi itong mga fissures na to pwede siyang maging cause in the future ng landslide.
The U.S. Geological Survey said the initial 6.6 magnitude quake was followed by a number of smaller shakes, including one which measured 5.8, and the area is still suffering the effects of a 6.4 magnitude quake that hit less than 2 weeks ago, killing at least 5 and damaging dozens of buildings. Now we have an update now, 8 people. The death toll has now risen to 8 on this 6.6 earthquake. And we'll give you more updates as we follow this developing story.
At least 3 people were killed and 9 others injured in a shooting at a Halloween party in southern Los Angeles late Tuesday, authorities and local media reports said. Aerial footage from local TV news channels showed paramedics treating the injured in a yard between a nail salon and a residential home in Long Beach. Neighbors said the shooting took place at a Halloween party, according to broadcaster CBS. The Long Beach Fire Department said on Twitter that the wounded were transported to local hospitals.
Meanwhile, the Getty Fire that erupted early Monday morning in Southern California has expanded 40 acres overnight. It now covers a total of 658 acres as of Tuesday U.S. time. The current evacuation zones are expected to remain in effect through Wednesday, with more high winds expected there. With the fire 15% contained, hot embers could still catch fire given the expected high winds on Tuesday night, predicted to hit around midnight. Our EBC correspondent in Los Angeles, Eva Basalyahe, talked to some of the evacuees and an American Red Cross official. Eva?
As of early Tuesday afternoon, the 656-acre Getty Fire has forced over 7,000 residents from their dwellings.
I had two phone calls come in on Monday at 3 a.m. and each one said prepare to be evacuated. And then the last one, another message came in a few minutes later saying, evacuate now. I live alone, and I got dressed, which a lot of people forget to do. They just run out the door.
Just scared, you know. Scared. I always thought that when there was a fire, I have a high-pressure hose and high-pressure water thing, you know. I said I'll stay and spray the home, but when I saw those flames like 200 feet up in the air, forget about the home, you know. It was always there, you know, the threat was always there. So I was always aware that the neighborhood could, you know, could blow up, you know. I mean, we had fires that were a few miles away many times, you know. This one got a lot closer, though. It was, you maybe, I don't know, it was hard to tell. Like, it was up 200 feet over the mountain where I live. But I think it was a couple of miles, maybe a couple of miles from the house, you know. But it was closer than anything we had before.
Evacuated to the Westwood Recreation Center, residents forced from their homes due to the Getty Fire are bracing for elevated fire danger due to Santa Ana winds that are expected to gust as strong as 80 miles per hour in higher elevations.
That's life. I think I was thinking that our motto right at this moment might as well be waiting for the wind, because we can't tell what we're going to do next until we see the wind and see what it does.
Yeah, the best quote I heard was from, I can't even remember who said, but someone said it's the price you pay for living in paradise. So that might be pretty close. It's pretty nice here.
With the fire at only 15% containment, American Red Cross was on hand to provide disaster relief.
Red Cross is providing a place to stay with a dormitory, meals. Anyone has any injuries, we have our nursing staff and medical staff as well. Basically, we're here to provide comfort and hope for those in need whenever a disaster of this type does occur. We've seen more wildfires in California. Whether it's an earthquake or a wildfire or a flood anywhere in the country, you can always be assured that you're going to have a Red Cross organization, a chapter, and volunteers ready to deploy anywhere in the country to help those when the need arises.
Red Cross has been wonderful. They've had public health people here. If you had any problems, so you could get some help. It's just wonderful, and there are lots of volunteers.
I've never met such charitable people, you know, just do everything for you. It's unbelievable is what it is, really.
Ready, Set, Go is the evacuation preparedness program of the Los Angeles Fire Department. With the escalating occurrences of wildfires, this campaign has become a way of life for Californians. In Westwood, California, Eva Basayahe, Eagle News, 1 with 25.
Fire crews battled to contain two major blazes in California on Tuesday as authorities warned of winds with dangerous gusts of up to 80 miles per hour that could fan the flames and spark new infernos. The National Weather Service issued a 24-hour wind advisory beginning from noon Tuesday for the northern part of California, where more than 4,500 firefighters have been deployed to fight the Kincaid Fire, the largest in the state this year. Farther south, where a fire near the Getty Center, or Getty Center west of downtown Los Angeles, has forced evacuations in upscale neighborhoods, the Weather Service warned of extremely critical fire weather beginning late Tuesday.
We can now announce that we have made progress, and this is 15% contained. As I've been saying in each of these press conferences, that is not to say that it's 85% out of control. 15% of it we are 100% confident will not spread anymore in that territory. That said, we have no open flame today, right now, as we have this press conference. But, and this is the big but, we have the most significant wind event in Los Angeles of the year.
In a bid to reduce the risk of fire, California's largest utility, Pacific Gas Electric Company, has been turning off power to hundreds of thousands of customers across northern and central California. California Governor Gavin Newsom calls on power suppliers whose obsolete lines are often the cause of the fires to do their work.
This has been a tough week. As Mayor Garcetti said, this has been a long week. Fires in San Diego, fires here in Los Angeles. Before the Getty, it was the Tick Fire that generated a lot of consternation, a lot of stress. In Northern California right now, it's the Kincaid Fire. And there are people, potentially up to 300,000 customers, that may continue to see their lights out, which means roughly a full week with their lights out, which is simply unacceptable. And that goes to the issue of greed and mismanagement and decades of a utility that didn't focus on you and public safety, but focused on shareholders. Can these utilities figure this out and do the damn work that is long overdue to focus on modernizing their grid, undergrounding their grid, and making sure that they have a grid where they can target these blackouts in a more sophisticated manner, and we're not in a position to reacting to these fires and dealing with their mess and making sure that we hold them accountable in the future.
In Chile, demonstrations and violent protests continue despite President Piñera's cabinet reshuffle. The skirmishing, which marked an 11th day of protests, included water cannon and tear gas from police as well as rock throwing by demonstrators. Protesters are demanding that President Piñera's resignation despite his making a raft of concessions already, including an increase in the minimum wage and pensions. We have a report coming in from our EBC correspondent in Santiago. Here's Kevin Cortez.
Yes, Alma, we're still following the developments here in Santiago, Chile, and I'm currently here at Plaza Italia, where most of manifestations here in Chile are occurring.
Thousands of protesters rallied in the streets of Santiago on Tuesday and marched towards the presidential palace La Moneda, as unrest over growing inequality and high living costs continued. Demonstrators set up barricades, waved Chile's flag, and carried signs demanding political and social change. The rally turned violent as protesters hurled rocks and set barricades alight, with riot police deploying water cannons and tear gas to disperse the crowds. According to reports, groups of demonstrators ransacked commercial premises in the area, causing a fire that damaged a hotel and several stores. A mall was seen burning in the center of Santiago on Monday, with plumes of black smoke billowing over the city amid ongoing anti-government protests. Firefighters were trying to extinguish the flames, as well as the anti-government protesters being dispersed by water cannons. The fire is reported to be intentional. Earlier in the day, President Sebastián Piñera announced several ministers were to be replaced in his cabinet, including Interior Minister Andres Chadwick and Finance Minister Felipe Lorraine. Meanwhile, Justice and Human Rights Minister Hernan Larraín said Tuesday that the government recognized there had been some situations involving law enforcement during the protests in which at least 20 people have died that appear to be human rights violations. And Amnesty International's Tactical Campaign and Crisis Response Chief, Cesar Marin, said organization, which is investigating more than 100 complaints of police abuse, is especially concerned about charges of sexual torture, reports of eye injuries, and situations in which police or military actions directly led to a death. A mission led by the United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, Chile's former president, is expected later this week. The massive anti-government demonstrations in Chile were initially triggered by a metro fare hike, which was later withdrawn. But protests continued to demand to address the rising cost of living, pension reform, and alleged abuse of power by the police. While the rally in Plaza Italia has been peaceful and colorful with people from different walks of life, the Carabineros and the other protesters just across the area continued to clash along the main avenue just around 1 kilometer away from La Moneda Palace in the afternoon. An observer from the National Institute of Human Rights was shot by Carabineros with pellets and was brought to the hospital for treatment. Cerro Santa Lucia caught on fire as well after a supposed tear gas from the government side fell on the area, according to witnesses. The fire was then contained fast by the Bomberos de Chile with the help of the protesters. The Chilean Congress also decided to initiate a constituent process in the afternoon to change the current constitution from the Pinochet regime. Protests are set to continue as calls for different protests throughout the week have been planned by different student groups, professional organizations, and labor unions.
Reporting from Santiago, Chile, this is Kevin Cortez for Eagle News, and I won with 25.
Beijing expressed approval and support Wednesday for the disqualification of Hong Kong democracy activist Joshua Wong from upcoming local elections after months of protests in the semi-autonomous city. Wong, one of the most prominent figures in the otherwise leaderless movement, accused the Hong Kong government of political screening after an election officer ruled his nomination for the November poll invalid on Tuesday. But a spokesman for China's top policy body on Hong Kong affairs said Wednesday that Wong had over many years proclaimed the viewpoints of so-called self-determination and Hong Kong independence and publicly denied that Hong Kong is a part of China. During recent protests, Wong repeatedly groveled to foreign powers for sympathy and begged for interference. Yang Guang of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office said on the body's website Wednesday. He is one of the chief culprits challenging the red line principle of one country, two systems, Yang said. The Hong Kong election officer wrote in her reasoning that Wong's concept of self-determination does not rule out the independence of Hong Kong as an option which she deemed inconsistent with the basic law, the city's mini-constitution. Wong and his party, Demosisto, have denied supporting independence for the city. They say they advocate self-determination and a referendum for Hong Kong people to decide how they want to be governed.
After 2 weeks of protests and violence in the streets of Lebanon, Lebanon has come to a turning point. Saad Hariri, the country's prime minister, has resigned, and hundreds of people gathered in Beirut to celebrate the prime minister's resignation. Now, Lebanon has been gripped by mass protests believed to be the country's largest since 2015, as demonstrators took to the streets to voice their discontent with deteriorating living conditions, austerity measures, capital flight, and the rise of the deficit and public debt. Our EBC correspondent from Lebanon, Gerly Salazar, reports from Beirut.
Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad Hariri announced that he was going to submit his resignation to the country's President Michael Aoun. He gave a short speech in Beirut on Tuesday.
Hariri's resignation comes after nearly 2 weeks of nationwide protests that were triggered on October 17, when the government announced a plan to tax calls via voice-over internet protocol programs such as FaceTime and WhatsApp. The fiscal measure came amid grave economic crisis in the Middle Eastern country. Since then, Lebanon has been engulfed in protest from across the sectarian divide, calling for the country's political elite to resign. Hariri was appointed Prime Minister for his second tenure in 2016. Meanwhile, outside, hundreds of people gathered in Beirut to celebrate Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad Hariri's resignation. People lighted flares, waved Lebanese flags at the city's Martyrs Square.
Over the last week, Lebanon has been gripped by mass protests believed to the country's largest since 2015. Demonstrators took to the streets to voice their discontent with deteriorating living conditions. Austerity measures, capital flight, and rise of the deficit and public debt. Reporting from Beirut, Lebanon, this is Gerly Salazar for Eagle News, and I am one with 25.
The Human Rights Commission said 10 people, including several teenagers, were killed in Indonesia's post-election riots as it accused police of beating up protesters. In its final report on the May riots, the agency Komnas HAM said 4 victims were underage and most had been shot in the capital Jakarta and demonstrations in Kalimantan, Indonesia's section of Borneo Island. Indonesia's Rights Commission called on police to find the perpetrators, who it suspected were actors trained, organized, and professional in using guns. A Jakarta police spokesman declined to comment, saying that authorities had yet to see the agency's report. Supporters of losing presidential candidate Prabowo Subianto took to the streets after Indonesia's Joko Widodo won re-election in the world's third biggest democracy. Police detained some 465 people during 2 nights of street battles that paralyzed central Jakarta, leaving hundreds injured, the rights agency said.
It's been will they or mainly won't they for weeks. But for now, MPs agreed to hold an early election on December 12, backing UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's call to try to break the crippling political deadlock that has seen Brexit delayed 3 times. Take a look.
All they want to do is procrastinate. They don't want to deliver Brexit on October the 31st, on November the 31st, even on January the 31st, Mr. Speaker. There is only one way to restore the esteem in which our democracy is held, and to recover the respect in which Parliament should be held by the people of this country, and that is finally to offer ourselves to the judgment of the people of this country.
Labour backs a general election because we want this country to be rid of this reckless and destructive Conservative government. A government that has caused more of our children to be living in poverty, more pensioners to be in poverty, and more people to be in work poverty. And I've said consistently, when no deal is off the table, we will back an election. Today, after much denial and much bluster by the Prime Minister, that deal is officially off the table. So this country can vote for the government that it deserves.
The ayes to the right, 438. The noes to the left, 20. So the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Unlocked. Order.
The amendment that I've tabled.
Labour, the SNP, and Liberal Democrats had all wanted a different date, but a poll at some point in December became almost certain as soon as Labour said it would back one. Let's listen in.
We always said we wanted an election, we do want an election, but we wanted no deal to be taken off the table. We've now had confirmation from all 28 EU member states that no deal is off the table, so we're going to go out there with the biggest campaign this party has ever mounted, totally united, totally determined, and I'm absolutely looking forward to going every part of this country with my wonderful shadow cabinet team here and all the fantastic Labour activists to give a message of hope where there isn't one with this government.
The amendment that I've tabled.
The election bill will now go to the unelected upper house of Lords for debate on Wednesday, but peers are expected to back the plan, paving the way for Parliament to be dissolved early next week.
Used to serenade him, Mr. Speaker, with the cry of
The U.S. House of Representatives took the historic step Tuesday of passing a resolution officially recognizing the Armenian Genocide, a move sure to anger Turkey amid already heightened tensions with Washington. Cheers and applause erupted when the chamber voted 405 to 11 in support of the resolution, affirming the United States record on the Armenian Genocide, a first for the U.S. Congress, where similar measures have been introduced but never reached the floor for a vote. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she was honored to join her colleagues in solemn remembrance of one of the great atrocities of the 20th century, the systematic murder of more than 1.5 million Armenian men, women, and children by the Ottoman Empire. The Armenians say the mass killings of their people from 1915 to 1917 amounted to genocide, a claim recognized by some 30 countries. Turkey strongly denies the accusation of genocide.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Tungkulin ng MTRCB ang
digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Stocks turned lower in Hong Kong on Wednesday as investors took a step back ahead of the Federal Reserve's latest policy decision and post-meeting statement, which they hope will provide clues about the bank's next moves. The Hang Seng Index retreated 0.44% or 119.05 points to 26,667.71. The benchmark Shanghai Composite Index lost 0.50% or 14.86 points to 2,939.32, while the Shenzhen Composite Index, which tracks stocks on China's second exchange, dropped 0.86% or 14.06 points to 1,628.62.
U.S.-Italian auto giant Fiat Chrysler and France's group PSA, the maker of Peugeot and Citroën cars, announced Wednesday they are in merger talks that could create the world's #4 automaker. Fiat Chrysler Automobiles said in a statement it confirms there are ongoing discussions aimed at creating one of the world's leading mobility groups with PSA. A person with a knowledge of the matter told AFP on Tuesday that the merger would yield an entity valued at about $50 billion. The person said Carlos Tavares, the chief executive of Peugeot's parent group PSA, would lead the new company as CEO, while John Elkann, chairman of FCA, would be chairman. Discussions between the automakers are ongoing and there is no guarantee of an agreement, the source said, confirming details first published in the Wall Street Journal. According to Bloomberg News, FCA's board of directors is expected to hold an emergency meeting on Wednesday.
Airbus cut its forecast for the number of planes it will deliver this year. It says it finds it difficult to meet ambitious targets to speed up production. Take a look. Now, profits held steady in the third quarter. The European plane manufacturer said in a statement it now plans on delivering around 860 commercial aircraft in 2019, up from 800 last year, but down from earlier estimates of 880 to 890 jets. As Airbus gets paid when it delivers aircraft to airlines, the figure is keenly watched by investors and analysts. Airbus shares slid 2% in morning trading on the Paris Stock Exchange, where the CAC 40 index was up 0.2%. Production of aircraft has risen this year, with Airbus delivering 571 in the first 9 months of this year, compared to 503 in the same period last year. But the firm had ambitious plans to put more of its top-selling next-generation jets into the hands of clients.
It's even less noisy, even at idle.
Boeing Chief Executive Dennis Muilenburg faced a barrage of criticism from U.S. lawmakers Tuesday at a jammed hearing on the company's commitment to safety. In his first appearance before Congress since the 737 MAX was grounded in March, Senator Tammy Duckworth questioned and told Muilenburg why the manufacturer did not disclose more details about the MCAS's lack of standards or safeguards, saying, and I quote, "You have told me half-truths over and over again, and these families are suffering because of it." Muilenburg stuck to the company's long-standing stance that development of the MAX followed time-tested company procedures and defended it against charges that it cut corners on safety and was too cozy with regulators, the Federal Aviation Administration said.
We spent over 100,000 engineering and test hours. We've flown more than 800 test flights. We've conducted simulator sessions with 545 participants from 99 customers and 41 global regulators. I've flown on a couple of flights myself. This has taken longer than expected, but we're committed to getting it right. We have not blamed the pilots, and I know that's been reported, but that is not our company position, and it never will be. We are responsible for our airplanes. We are responsible, and we own that, regardless of cause. Any accident with one of our airplanes is unacceptable.
In October 2018, Lion Air flight JT610 crashed into the Java Sea, killing all the 189 passengers and crew on board. In March, an Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashed shortly after takeoff from Addis Ababa, killing all 157 people on board. The incident led to the grounding of the entire Boeing 737 MAX fleet.
Kibori Chariot was just a small boy when his family was violently expelled by British colonizers from their ancestral land in Kenya's lush tea-growing Western Highlands, banished never to return. But now Kenya's Kipsigis and Talai peoples are calling for a United Nations inquiry into their plight. Today, Kericho boasts some of Kenya's most profitable agricultural land. But traditional owners say they reap none of the benefits because the land is largely owned by multinational giants such as Unilever, which sources tea from Kericho for its best-selling brands like Lipton. Watch this.
Kibore Cheriot was only 10 years old when British colonizers violently expelled his family from ancestral lands in Kenya's lush tea-growing Western Highlands. Nearly a century later, the last living survivor of the 1934 deportation lives in Kericho with his extended family. The 94-year-old still bristles at the memory, recalling the suffering as his community was marched to a distant, unfamiliar place.
The area was infested by venomous snakes and some other insects. When they would bite you, your body would swell due to the venom or poison.
The British land grab started in the early 1900s and continued until Kenya's independence in 1963. Today, Kericho boasts some of Kenya's most profitable agricultural land, but traditional owners say they reap none of the benefits. The land is largely owned by multinational giants such as Unilever, which sources tea from Kericho for its best-selling brands like Lipton.
The people who were chased away from this soil is the Kipsigis community. And actually the shareholders, the current shareholders who are in Britain are reaping profits out of the proceeds which is planted on our soil.
Throughout colonization, the people thrown off their land were herded into native reserves, marginal land with harsh living conditions. Legal experts have argued that under international law, the UK is responsible for the atrocities perpetrated against the Kipsigis and Talai. The victims want a formal apology and reparations for the seizure of their homeland, land which over decades was taken by force and reallocated to white settlers, who turned the fertile soil into tea plantations.
I am so angry because we were very rich people. I want the British to apologise so that we can be friends and embrace one another.
British and Kenyan lawyers will visit Kericho this week. They represent more than 100,000 victims who have filed an official complaint against the UK government at the United Nations. Recently, the UK has faced a slew of compensation claims from former colonies, including Kenya. Justice campaigners have found motivation in the success of previous claims. In 2013, the UK apologised for a crackdown against the 1950s Mau Mau uprising in Kenya and paid out reparations.
97 kilometers of rocks in Thai waters stand between Beijing and complete control of the Mekong, a mighty river that feeds millions as it threads south from the Tibetan Plateau through 5 countries before emptying into the South China Sea. Watch this.
Mastering the mighty Mekong, China wants to take full control of Southeast Asia's biggest river. The waterway feeds millions from Tibet through Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia and Vietnam before emptying in the South China Sea. But Chinese dams upstream have for years disrupted the flow and water level. Fish stocks lie ravaged and unseasonal droughts and floods are common. Many fishermen have been forced out, but Suk is staying put for now.
This year is the worst. The water is too low. I have to fish and fish again to catch one.
A stretch of just 97 kilometers is all that now stands between Beijing and outright domination. China plans to blast the rapids and dredge the river so huge cargo ships and maybe military vessels can pass. Fierce protests from locals prompted China to put the plans on hold. These boulders are a vital habitat for fish and birds.
The people who want to blast the rapids might call them filthy rocks, but we, the villagers, see them as important ecosystem that makes the river abundant.
Beijing says the changes will benefit everyone, increasing trade and generating wealth. It sees the Mekong as the nerve center in a network of industry and transport links. But China will remain in supreme control of the region and the disputed South China Sea.
I think for China it's a kind of a leverage, it's a kind of geo-economic power. China has power because it's upstream, it can build dams at will, and the downstream countries and communities cannot do much about it.
It's festival time in the Thai town of Chiang Khong. The history and traditions of people here are linked to the river, and they're worried by China's ambitions.
I fear that another country coming to our peaceful town will make our culture disappear.
A few rocks and rapids are the last bastion of hope for many dependent on the Mekong. Local people and the environment versus business and geopolitics. Big themes playing out on the slow-moving river.
WhatsApp sued Israeli technology firm NSO Group, accusing it of using the Facebook-owned messaging service to conduct cyber espionage on journalists, human rights activists, and others. WhatsApp head Will Cathcart said the lawsuit was filed after an investigation showed the Israeli firm's role the cyber attack despite its denials. The suit filed in a California federal court contended that Israel's NSO Group tried to infect approximately 1,400 target devices with malicious software to steal valuable information from those using the messaging app. The lawsuit also said the software developed by NSO, known as Pegasus, was designed to be remotely installed to hijack devices using the Android, iOS, and BlackBerry operating systems. In an interview early this year with Israeli daily Ma'ariv, Julio was asked about reporters that the telephone spyware was used to bug Jamal Khashoggi prior to the Saudi journalist's October 2018 murder in Istanbul. In Mexico, where investigative journalist Javier Valdez was shot dead on the street in broad daylight in 2017, prominent journalists and activists say the government of former President Enrique Peña Nieto targeted them using Pegasus. In 2016, Apple also rushed out a security update after researchers said prominent Emirati rights activist Ahmed Mansour was targeted by UAE authorities using Pegasus spyware. NSO firm has maintained that it only licenses its software to governments for fighting crime and terror.
Waddling up the beach in single file, their heads held high with an almost self-important demeanor, king penguins are a major draw in the Falkland Islands tourism industry. Their fluffy brown chicks are nearly fearless of humans, meaning tourists at Volunteer Point, a peninsula on East Falkland Island, might get almost close enough to touch one. Kings are just one of 5 penguin species in the Falklands, alongside the wacky-looking rock hoppers, which have yellow tassels sprouting from the side of their heads, gentoos or macaronis, and the burrowing Magellanics. The Falklands have incredibly rich biodiversity, including more than 25 species of whales and dolphins, but it is the guaranteed ability to get up close with penguins that makes it a particularly enticing destination. Tourism is a growing industry in the Falklands, despite their remote location in the South Atlantic, some 480 kilometers off Argentina, and occasional political and economic hostility from Buenos Aires. In 2018, there was a 6.3% increase in tourist arrivals and a 29.4% surge in tourist expenditure to almost 8.8 million pounds, or that's $11.3 million. The peninsula is also home to gentoos and Magellanic penguins, also known locally as jackasses because of their braying like call, as well as oyster catchers, South American terns, and ruddy-headed geese. More than 60,000 a year visit the Falklands on cruise ships, and sometimes when the bigger vessels arrive, they can outnumber the locals.
And finally in our news, the Stars of Guerrero is back for round 2 as the stars turned out for the premiere of Guerrero 2. Guerrero 2 is the much anticipated sequel to Guerrero. PMPC Star Awards 2017 Best Child Actor Julio Sabernorio returns for his portrayal of Miguel, who brings smiles and joy to everyone he meets. Veteran actor and director Arturo de Guzman, newcomer Mia Suarez, and popular actor Victor Neri playing a special cameo role complete the new characters in this sequel. Guerrero 2 is the third film venture of EBC Films in the production of inspirational movies. EBC Films hopes that it will make people laugh and cry. Most importantly, it wants to inspire Filipinos here and around the world to face life with greater vigor and fight for their faith with stronger zeal. Let's listen in.
We have a lot of newcomers sa pelikula, but they really act like professionals. This is one of the few films na, you know, even if I had to go to the bathroom, di ako makatayo talaga kasi talagang na-engage ako. This is storytelling at its best. So, Guerrero 2 is a movie na kailangan mapanood talaga ng mas nakakarami pang mga Pilipino. Because this is a movie na talagang mas-showcase yung galing ng Pilipinas.
Yung bigat ng pelikula sobra. Ang ganda-ganda ng pelikula. Nagalingan ako dun sa bata, sa matanda na ang galing-galing nilang umarte, parang veterano na talaga. Kompleto siya. Drama and comedy. Ayun. May konting comedy pero mas lamang yung drama. Nakakatuwa. Yes, I highly recommend po yung pelikula. Panoorin niyo po. For sure, makakapulot po kayo ng magandang aral. At dun sa mga nakakaranas ng depression, ito yung pelikula na mag-aano sa atin para hindi ma-depress sa buhay. Action ko, ang ganda ng pelikula. Kompleto siya. Papayakin ka. Actually, madaming beses na papayakin ka na basang-basa yung panyo ka. Kaya, at saka papatawanin ka. Ang galing ng bata. Miski wala siyang workshop na pinagdaanan na mahaba. Napakagaling ng bata. Yung mga linya ng bata, yung mga linya ng mga karakter, pwede natin sa buhay yun ng yung mga kulturang nakakalimutan na natin na pwede ibalik dito. Kaya mga kababayan, inikayat ko kayong panoodin nyo ang Guerrero 2.
Very thankful po kami sa lahat po ng sumuporta. Napakasaya po talaga namin kasi hindi po namin expect na ganito po yung mainit na pagtanggap po. Sana po patuloy po pong suportahan na pelikulang Guerrero 2 at sana, supportan nyo din po yung Guerrero 1 po. Ayun, ini-invite po namin kayo manood po ng mga screenings po ng Guerrero 2. I-like nyo po ang page po ng EBC Films para sa update po kung saan po mag-screenings po. At anong date po at anong oras. Yan po, sana manood po kayo.
Ayun, syempre, sobrang saya po. At yun nga, maraming umattend dito sa premiere ng Guerrero 2 Tuloy ang Laban. So yun, sobrang saya po at overwhelming lahat ng mga comments, reactions, and feedbacks po ng mga nanood sa Guerrero 2. Ayun, para sa mga schedules po ng Guerrero 2, please follow po the EBC Films fan page po sa Facebook. So, nandun po lahat ng mga screening updates. Pero second week po ng November, magkakaroon po ng screening sa SM Lipa.
Guerrero, a surname of Spanish origin meaning warrior. Tayo mga Guerrero ay mandirigma. Matatapang, hindi po iyakin. Guerrero! Guerrero! Dapat palagi yung pinakausap yung kuya mo, ha? Ano ginawa ko? Di tulog na tulog, ha?
Nagising na ka.
Something to watch out for.
Yeah. It's a nice film, actually. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's the news for tonight. I'm Alma Angeles. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, we would like to greet Brother Eduardo V. Manalo and advance happy birthday po.
Advance happy birthday po.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. I'm Alma and
we're one with 25.